let's talk a bit about the ZK EVM and the new Prover Type 1 that you just launched. I'm guessing most of our listeners do not know what a prover is. So maybe you can give us an idea of what a prover is and what a Type 1 prover is. I know that fits into four or five different types. I can't remember exactly how many there are. Can you give us a sort of intro to that?
Yeah, sure. So prover is what allows us to generate zero-knowledge proofs that show that a ton of blocks are valid on an L2. And so basically, the proof is what allows us to move funds off of that L2. Because we can prove that, okay, we have this updated state, a bunch of users wanted to exit, and you can process those transfers or those messages because you know that that block is now finalized as soon as the proof is accepted by Ethereum. So that's what a prover is. And then with like ZKVMs, there are a few different types of ZKVMs. So there are some, and basically Vitalik came up with this framework that classifies them according to like how EVM equivalent the experiences for developers and for users. And so at the far end of the spectrum, you have like a type 4 ZKVM, which is, I believe, ZK Sync and Starknet. And basically it's an environment that's actually not the EVM, but it supports compiling Solidity programs, which is what EVM code is written in, to run on this ZKVM. So you have this compiler, and maybe there's some compatibility issues, and you can't use existing dev tooling, but overall it's like pretty good, and maybe there are some advantages to using a ZKVM. And so if you move further along the spectrum, you have a type 2 ZKVM. So we can kind of collapse type 2 and 3. And a type 2 ZKVM presents an environment that is EVM equivalent for users and for developers. It presents the same environment. You can use your like existing Solidity code, you can use your wallets, your dev tools, but on the back end, like the way that Ethereum manages state is different from the EVM that's running on Ethereum. And these changes make it a little bit more efficient to generate zero-knowledge proofs. So you can have this new chain that's running on a type 2 ZKVM, but you can't use a type 2 ZKVM prover for existing EVM chains. Like you can't use it to prove an optimistic rollup or the Polygon POS chain. And so that's where type 1 comes in. Type 1 allows you to take any existing EVM chain and immediately start generating proofs for it. So this could be the Polygon POS chain. It could be an optimistic rollup. It could even be the Ethereum mainnet. And so that's what we're really excited about is we delivered a type 1 ZKVM that is really, really efficient and really, really cheap. So the average cost to generate a proof for a transaction on mainnet Ethereum is at 1/10 to 2/10 of a cent. And this is going to come down by 30 to 50x by the end of the year. And so this is like super, super cheap.
This is a huge deal. I think that these tech advancements get lost in price action of the market and the more overwhelming narrative. I wish more people were talking about Aglair and Type 1 Prover that you guys just built, but it's not as sexy as some meme coin that's pumping. Unfortunately, no diss to your team or anything.
No, of course.
That's where the current market is focused. But what's so amazing to me about this is this Type 1 Prover, it's going to allow a chain like Polygon POS to come on to become a ZK EVM compatible. But also, you mentioned optimistic rollups could also use this Type 1 Prover, and you open sourced this Type 1 Prover, which is like just the most Web3 and crypto native thing you could do to really embrace this open source concept. In Web 2, that would have been absolute, like, protect that IP, do not share that with anybody. Talk to us a little bit about what you guys made, what led you to make that decision of open sourcing it, and really, like, what will that allow down the road in relation to an optimistic rollup?
Yeah, sure. So I will say, I think even a lot of Web3 people were a little surprised and taken aback by the open source the Type 1. And I think, like, if you look at other projects, like Arbitrum has a restrictive BSL license on a lot of their tech. And I think that there's like a defensible and reasonable justification to take that approach. And so for us, like, if you look at it on the surface, it seems like, oh, you guys develop this amazing tech and you're just going to give it away to your competitors. And now they're going to be like on the same footing as you. And that's like a really stupid, naive decision. And I think if you look one level deeper, like it's our view that in the long run, execution layer tech will be totally commoditized. Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, like what we're building with the ag layer is really, really important, because the ag layer is actually what allows us to scale beyond the limitations of a single chain. And so for us, like the network effects develop around the ag layer. Like the ag layer is this environment where liquidity is shared and users are shared, but at the same time, there's no cost to chains to join the ag layer. And so like, if you're a chain, you can join the ag layer and you can use whatever staking token you want or whatever governance token or gas token you want. You can use whatever execution environment you want. And so like for us, from a strategic perspective for the Polygon project, like the thing that makes sense is getting as many chains onto the ag layer. And the situation right now with optimistic rollups is we have enormously successful projects like Arbitrum and Optimism that have huge amounts of value and liquidity and usage that are fragmented across different chains in the Ethereum ecosystem. And this like cannot continue. Like this is not like a model that will support mainstream adoption or like an internet scale crypto ecosystem. And so for us, like for me, the ideal scenario would be that Optimism or Arbitrum took the tech that we've made open source and upgraded to become a ZK rollup, because it would mean that they could join the ag layer. And like fundamentally, that's a positive sum interaction because they get access to all of the existing liquidity and apps and users that exist in the Polygon ecosystem. But vice versa, those users and apps and NFT mints and DeFi primitives get access to any optimistic rollup that's joining Polygon ecosystem. And so like that is the long-term vision, is like building an ecosystem around the ag layer. It's not protecting tech via restrictive licenses and trying to compete on the basis of like single chain.